ask.
Self-consumed, no talent, mediocre piece of shit. And I've earned my right to say it.
Great idea.
Too kite?
More circular.
Is it uncomfortable?
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, good. All right, we'll get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Ward. I'm the CMO at Grow. This is a session called B2C, B2B data-driven marketing, and then there's something about and everything in between. We've got Karen Peterson from BrainStorm, Rick Galan from Qualtrics, and Tim Eyre from Workfront, who have joined us. When we were getting ready to put the conference together, as we were building our agenda, we looked at our user base and realized that we actually have a pretty wide user base across SaaS, e-commerce, agencies, some manufacturing, and a few others. But one of the commonalities that we found in lots of those companies was that most of them, or a lot of them, are using us for their marketing and visualizing and getting the data out of their marketing systems. And so I think a lot of us share Google products, some type of CRM, maybe marketing automation. And so put together a terrific panel with experts who actually have both experience in B2B and B2C. All of us actually right now are in B2B, but over the course of our careers, and I'll have them introduce themselves in a minute, have some of both. And I think that will be valuable to learn from. As a reference point, so I have only been at Grow for 4 months. Before that, I spent time in marketing leadership roles at Workfront, at Pluralsight and Adobe on the B2B SaaS side. And before that, in B2C for 6.5 years at Ancestry.com. And so I've got the the same kind of B2C and B2B experience as our panelists as well. So I've got a format. We're going to run through a series of questions. At the last 5 to 10 minutes or so, I'll open up for questions from the audience. Would love to dig in on things that you're interested in. To get started, though, let me introduce and have each of the panelists pass the microphone and introduce themselves just really briefly. Karen.
Hi. So actually, Mike and I met, we've spent a lot of time together overlapping at Ancestry, but we actually met before Ancestry. So I spent 13 years there. About half of that time at Ancestry, I was managing the Canadian business. I was living in Toronto and getting that business off the ground and growing that website and market. And by the time I decided to leave, I was running the entire US marketing team and served as their interim CMO as well. So a long, long career in the B2C world. I just joined BrainStorm, which is a B2B company, in the last 4 or so months too. And I'm loving it because it's a much smaller, earlier stage company that's actually had a long tenure. They've been around for over 16 years. But I'm now growing their marketing team kind of from the ground up because they've been really a sales-led organization. So, and I have 4 kids. I live in Heber and love being a mom and
Awesome.
wife and all that.
Thanks, Karen.
Hello. So I'm Rick. I'm the head of digital at Qualtrics. I've been there for about 3 years. Also a very sales-led organization. Didn't have much marketing before I started, although I'm not obviously the first, but been building out those programs in that team for those 3 years. Prior to that, I was actually in the manufacturing world. I worked at Blendtec, world's best blenders. They're amazing. And I've spent a lot of time, my background is primarily e-commerce prior to that point. So 1-800-Contacts, I worked at Overstock.com. I worked for an agency that serviced a lot of, an agency and toolset that serviced a lot of e-commerce clients. So I've worked with Nordstrom and Eddie Bauer and a lot of the kind of major e-commerce players out there. So that's pretty much it. I have 5 kids. Boom, I know.
Welcome to Utah.
All right, I'm Tim. I am the VP. Did somebody just cheer for me? Lizzie. Thank you.
Thanks, Lizzie. He brought his fan club.
I did, yeah. So I'm the VP of web marketing and marketing operations at Workfront. I've been in my role for about 3 months as well. Many of you that didn't know how long Mike has been at Grow would probably have known him for being at Workfront for a long time. When he moved over to Grow, I actually got his old position. So thanks, Mike. Happy to be here.
You're welcome.
So I started off my career in the agency space. I see a few of you that may have crossed paths with Orange Soda back in the day. So I was there. That's where I got my start. Rick just laughed, which is okay. This is a safe place.
Everybody worked at Orange Soda.
I know, it's the Kevin Bacon of... Mike's the Kevin Bacon of... Forget it. And from there, I went to Extra Space Storage, and then went to Vivint, and then I helped run a agency here in Utah called Big Leap. So we got a chance to work with Mike at Workfront, Domo, a little bit with Pluralsight, InMoment, a lot of the companies kind of around the valley. And then I've been with Workfront for just over a year, but again, in my role for about 3 months. If we're doing the kid thing, I have 3 kids, I have a new dog, and if anything you can remember about me, I am a big Tom Brady fan. Go Pats, thanks.
Hold on to that. I was actually
please.
hoping that we weren't going to bring up Tom Brady, but since you
No,
brought it up.
we did.
No, so there are 4 topics that we plan to cover over the course of the next 20, 25 minutes or so. And we'll bucket them into one around driving performance, the second around alignment and kind of the single source of the truth. We'll talk about that for a little bit. We'll cover visibility and accountability, and we'll cover kind of the speed to decision making. And so let's get started with Tim, since he got the microphone last. You got the conch. Tell me about your top, I don't think I prepared you this actually. What are your top 3 metrics that you measure as a marketer in your role, and maybe how those differ from your CMO?
Thanks for the heads up.
You're welcome.
So really what the top 3 metrics for me really have to align with our business objectives and how that translates into kind of my world, what I have more control over. So on the website of our organization, that's the website, obviously, paid search, organic. We have a web experience team, so we focus a lot on web personalization and conversion rate optimization. And so really for us, our bottom line metric that we really have to kind of roll everything up to is our qualified sales opportunities that we're generating from our programs and from my team. From there, we have kind of daily goals, quarterly goals that we really have to best align to how we actually meet those targets. Beyond that, the second thing is how do we actually get there? It's a combination of a lot of different programs, both that touch my team specifically, and we have a programs team, events team that may have some sort of connection to the website in some way. So we want to be able to report on that. So not only understanding how do we hit those targets, especially within the team that I'm managing, if it's conversion rate optimization, and being able to really understand kind of the what and the why of the scenario and how we actually hit it. And then the third thing is reporting. So our marketing operations team is responsible for all of marketing reporting. We have an internal revenue team that I sit on that I'm responsible for presenting marketing level metrics, and it's not only specifically to marketing, but that's generally kind of the focus that I take in those meetings. And so understanding, are we hitting our goals? Are we providing our team members and different program owners with the right level of data and metrics that's actionable, available, accurate, and agreed upon? And if we're able to meet those things, then we're doing a good job.
Can you run through those one more time, those 3 or 4 things you just listed off?
So it should be accurate, available, meaning you should be able to actually have access to it. If it's stuck behind, in a data warehouse somewhere or a data lake that you can't have access to, then it doesn't do you a heck of a lot of good. It needs to be agreed upon. I'm not sure if we'll get into this or not, but it's kind of been a common theme of the one source of truth. I don't know if anybody has had the pleasant opportunity of going to a meeting where your numbers aren't the same as your sales counterparts or BI or finance, but I have that fun opportunity every week. And so trying to align those metrics that are agreed upon from the ELT all the way down to individual program owners and specialists. Actionable. So we should be able to have data that you can take something from and be able to know what to do with it. It's one thing to show a dashboard that is so high level to where it's a very high level representation. A CMO may have more benefits from seeing something really high level, but on the individual level as a program owner, you need to be able to see where am I spending my money, what is the outcome of the money that I'm spending, and how do I turn it and optimize my programs. How many did I go through? 3?
I don't remember.
Actionable, available, agreed upon, and accurate.
Okay, got all 4 of them. Awesome. Either one of the two of you want to chime in on the metrics that are kind of top of mind for a CMO, top of mind for, go ahead.
Well, a couple things I think about. So, again, when I started managing the Canadian business for a long time ago, I remember, we were working through my performance goals. And at the time, I don't remember what 2 or 3 were. I'm sure there was something qualitative, there was something like SMART goals. But number 1, all in, was subscriber additions, EBITDA, LTR, growth, kind of all in. And I remember talking to, the head of international at the time, and I said, should those be separate goals? And he helped shape the way I think about it, which is, if you think about the very top level companies, it's going to be really like revenue, retention, probably growth, and potentially some cost element that is really top level. And then you look one level down from that, and there's all these indicators, dashboards that help you keep a tap on your alignment to those top 4. But I think that we also have to think about metrics in combination, because any one of those, imagine as a subscription business, I could really blow subscriber ads out the door and really harm some of those other retention metrics. And so I think it's important to always be savvy about the way you put numbers together and think about them holistically so that you aren't somehow looking at things through a weird lens, or you're incentivizing your teams to go after the wrong thing. So that is, I think, a really important thing. I never can really just say, you know, there's just 3 things, because there's all of these indicators that align to what you're ultimately trying to achieve.
I think that's a really good point. I think far too often, and I've been guilty of it myself and had conversations even recently in the company of, what's that one metric that you pay attention to for marketing? And the answer I come back to is, well, I could generate lots of inquiries, lots of MQLs, but if they don't convert, or if they're too small, or if they don't, if they churn out, that metric really didn't matter that much. And so keeping those into context, I think, are really important. Rick, I'm going to pass you a slightly different question, but kind of in the same vein. When you set goals for your team, what are the goals that you typically set? What are a few of the goals that you set? So you've got actuals that you see what is performing, but do you have specific goals you say, I need to get to this number on these few things in a period of time?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are a very growth-oriented organization right now. So like we're pushing for really big numbers on the sales accepted opportunities all the time. So like when you're talking about having that one metric, kind of our North Star, the things we have to drive to, is a kind of a number on the sales accepted ops. And so I try to build my goals related to that for each of the team members. Now, I oversee a digital marketing team. There's a lot of people that do a disparate number of jobs, right? So email marketer and a paid search person don't get measured the same way. That doesn't make any sense, right? But what we try to do is we try to align the channel's contribution towards that goal and come up with the appropriate growth for that channel based on how we're investing in it. So overall, we're growing 50% all the time is our number, right? And so with that quarter-over-quarter growth number, we have to bake it out by how each channel has contributed, what do we expect to happen organically or through direct and through just the website by itself. And then we look at, all right, conversion rate goal overall, this needs to move from here to here in order to hit this goal. Paid search, you need to do this. Paid social needs to do this, et cetera, et cetera. So we just try to take that main primary goal and break it down into individual components. Then within that, there are other operational goals for each person, right? So there's not one number for a channel, right? There's other ways to improve and other things that lead up to that number, but without aligning to that number, people go off in all sorts of funny directions.
Perfect, thank you. Next question is around the single source of truth. I don't know who wants to tackle this first, but I think there's a lot of talk in the industry. And single source of truth can mean a lot of things. In most cases, for me, in the last several years, it's been sales and marketing. The sales has a number and marketing has a number. In fact, a couple of years ago, we would sit at Workfront, we would sit in a QBR, a quarterly business review, and they would show the green metrics that marketing was hitting all of its numbers, and they would show the red metrics that sales wasn't hitting the numbers, and the CEO would go, and he coined the phrase greenwashing. Why is it that marketing can hit all their numbers but sales can't? Tim's got all kinds of stories I'm sure he could share, but who wants to chime in and start with that?
I'll jump in since I'm holding the mic.
Okay.
I mean, marketing and sales alignment, if in a B2B organization, that is a major concern, right? In B2C, the numbers speak for themselves, right? And so then it's a matter of like people fighting on attribution models at that point. But speaking B2B for a moment, like one of the most critical things you can do is to get a clear and distinct understanding that $1 can't live in two places, right? At the end of the day, there's a line that is drawn, and that your goals are set appropriate to that line. So marketing's contribution to sales, to the final closed won revenue number, has to be measured in a certain way, and marketing and sales have to align to that number. That's great at the QBR boardroom level. You definitely need to do that. However, that's not a number that can be shaken down into individual channels where people have multiple touch points. Even the sales team has a hard time with all the touches on like various salespeople on the same account and so on. So like, I think it is very important at the top level to make sure that you have this clear line that you are drawing, but then operationally you have metrics that you can work with in order to drive towards that number, in order to know that you're succeeding on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so ours is it's a constant kind of moving target for us a little bit, getting our sales department and marketing and even finance, kind of all on the same page. One thing that we're really trying to work on is a data dictionary. So having very clearly defined metrics and how those are applicable to all parts of the organization. And then being able to show up at we have a one view of truth meeting that we have every week that's with marketing, sales, we have a sales ops individual, BI, and then finance. And the purpose of the meeting is to get everybody aligned as best we can. And we don't have it all figured out. For example, one of our VPs of sales, we have an agreed upon set of qualified sales opportunities that we needed to hit, or sales accepted opportunities, depending on the acronym that everybody uses. And partially, midway through the quarter, he decided to change his target from focusing in on QSOs to meetings booked. And so their team was hitting their goals because they changed it, but we didn't know they changed it. So we don't have it perfectly ironed out, but the idea is, I think, is kind of building off of what Rick was saying, is just getting that alignment, those agreed upon set of metrics and goals. That a dollar is a dollar, and it can't be, it can't live in a variety of different places, because, Mike's been gone for 3 months, but we're definitely still trying to figure a lot of those same kind of greenwashing.
You didn't solve it in the last 90 days.
Almost.
Yeah, I thought you were better than that. All right, so I'm going to actually pass the mic to Karen. You're new in the company.
Yeah.
So you've been at BrainStorm since May. It's an organization that is kind of just starting out with a you're the first head of marketing really at the organization. Talk about from that perspective of building the alignment and across sales and marketing to get to that one source of the truth and kind of the overall marketing and sales alignment.
Yeah, so actually what both Tim and Rick talked about is kind of how I'm trying to tackle it, which is, the organization has been growing all these years. Again, it's still an earlier stage company, but it's been really bootstrapped for a long time. Very sales driven, so really great growth through the sales organization, human capital. So what they wanted to do is bring in someone like me to help scale the business through digital. So everything I think about when I am assessing decisions is, one, what are we really trying to achieve? And that's just like a good strategy, right? What's the end game that we're trying to achieve, and is this action or initiative or strategy aligned? But two, importantly, is, are we setting ourselves up right now to scale? And I'll answer your question more directly, but one of the things that I think about all the time, having gone through such massive growth over such a long time at Ancestry, is that when you're small and you're scrappy, sometimes you're moving fast and you've got drive and energy and a lot of responsibility. And so sometimes you kind of skip the steps on setting the foundation and the structure and everything up in such a way that it's super scalable, because you're in the weeds, you're working. And so now, having experienced that at a company that became a $1 billion company, there were times, later on in my journey where we would look back and go, whew, that would have been awesome if we had structured the database that way 5 years ago. So that's one of the beauties about me going back to an earlier stage company in my mind, is that I'm the one constantly going, it's worth it. It is worth it right now to spend that extra little time to make sure this is structured properly. Is this scalable? So that's kind of one of the things I have in the back of my mind. And then it kind of throws back to exactly what they were talking about, which is, are we aligned on what the definitions are? Are we aligned on what the funnel is? Do we all agree on what the qualifications are at each of these levels? And if you do, that's one of the foundations to be able to scale. And so it's beautiful in a way, because we have a fairly new sales head and me new as head of marketing. And so I'm just sitting down with him going, we can set it up right? We don't have any of the biases. We don't have any of the history. Let's just set it up right in a modern way of thinking about B2B. Because I natively come at it from a consumer angle, which is, I'm used to thinking about the whole funnel. And I know there's a line that I need to stop at, but at least I have that, all of us coming from this consumer background, you think about the whole funnel, and then you can start to parse it out. Whereas if you just think about the top, and marketing is obsessed with that metric at the top, that's where you're talking about there's that massive disconnect. So let's sit down, think about the whole funnel together, and then build out the definitions and think through how we're going to align with each other and how it's going to work, and make sure it's set up scalably.
Awesome, thank you. I'm going to move topics now. We're going to talk about visibility. I'd be interested in each one of you to talk a little bit about how you, one, provide visibility to your teams to the data that matters, and two, share what that looks like. Is that a dashboard? Is that an email? Is that a Mongo spreadsheet? And kind of talk a little bit about where you are in the stages of visibility and alignment for your own individual teams, and having them understand what's important.
Okay, so definitely we're building it out. So again, they have.
By the way,
really
you can also talk about previous
Ancestry.
as well.
Yep, perfect. So BrainStorm, they have great visibility from a certain aspect of the funnel down, right? And so now we're building it from there up. And so some of the data doesn't exist because we haven't been leveraging paid advertising at the top of the funnel. But instead, so what we've been doing is setting up the structure. It's in a way, it's hard because you don't have any data that you're working with. And on the flip side, it's kind of ideal because we can set up the structure in such a way that when the numbers start to flow in, we are looking at what the ideal is for us to capture and those metrics to monitor, and then we'll optimize as the numbers start to flow, right? Because sometimes you kind of work with what you've got. So for us, I wanted to start working with what's the ideal and then kind of build up to it. And then, in the Ancestry world, we were a performance-driven machine and very, very direct marketing response plus, brand marketing as well. And so as I was running the whole U.S. marketing team, there were weekly touch bases with higher up executives, much more common touch bases within the marketing team, dashboards that we leveraged. But there's one thing that I really loved about one of the things we did is that there was the dashboards and all those views, but what we did is we tried to take the numbers and create a story. And so instead of just presenting an Excel spreadsheet or a dashboard view, we forced ourselves to actually write a narrative each week about it so that you didn't say, this is up and this is down. It was more like, this is up because of this and this and this. And we saw movement over here and we have a hypothesis that it's this, or we're drilling down there. And so I think as marketers, the more you can start to tell a story with your numbers, it's way more impactful. So I love the dashboards, but I loved the narrative too.
No, I think that's a huge point. I think for any analyst that I've ever hired for, I'm as interested in. So I hire for passion and the ability to dig into numbers, but their storytelling abilities more than anything else, because they've got to be able to translate it. Especially the larger organizations, if you don't have somebody who can help you, or if you can't get into the numbers and go, what does it mean and who cares, then it's just a green or a red up on the screen. And so that storytelling ability is a huge.
Sorry,
You don't get the microphone.
I know, I'm just to get it back. One more little minor thing I would say about that, just because the best analytics partner that I ever worked with, we would get in our room, we're looking at dashboards as kind of indicators, and then we kind of start to dig into the numbers, and we would get so excited about all these questions that we could answer and how we could dig into the data. And she was so good that she would kind of watch us and participate in us building this like dream of all the data that we wanted to go and capture and analytics that we wanted to dig into. And then at the end, she would go, okay, what are you going to do with that data? And always we would kind of step back and go, actually, we thought that was a really cool question. And I guess we don't exactly know what we were going to do directly with that data. And so having a partner that pushes you like that, because you can get really excited about the questions you can ask, but if it's not actionable, it's totally pointless. Totally pointless.
Thanks.
So I've worked at incredibly data-rich and sophisticated organizations, and I've worked at organizations where I have been the person to install Google Analytics. So Qualtrics sits somewhere in between, just so everyone knows, which is kind of funny. But what I found, first of all, I really love what you're talking about when you say like making sure that people know what they're going to do with the data. When I have a team that manages channels and different programs, I actually usually require them to pull their own data and put it together. And the reason is not because dashboarding is not available, but the reason is because I need them to be close enough to the data that they can tell me what happened and what happened because of what happened. Right? So like when the number is up, I want them to know exactly what they did that made the number go up, and I want them to know what they did that made the number go down, so we can do more or less of those things. So that's number one, is like from an operational standpoint, from like a weekly reporting with my team standpoint, to see how the channels are performing, like I want them pulling the data, putting it together, saying what's working, saying what's not, coming up with ways we're going to improve, et cetera. From the kind of highest level, we have channel level dashboarding that gets reported up to the executive team, stuff like that. That information, though, is not super applicable because in a B2B organization, there's a lot of lagging metrics, right? So like it takes months and months to close these deals, and the revenue numbers that we are measuring against there's a lot of activities that happen, and so they don't have a super applicable impact on our day-to-day operations. What does is some of the leading metrics, right? So number of leads is a great leading metric, right? The cost per lead is a great leading metric to say that like we're on kind of the right track, we think, right? And then you get a little bit lagging metrics on the quality of those leads. That takes a day or two, right, to figure out. And then the number of leads that have turned into opportunities, that's another couple of days, right? And then so like as time goes on, you get better data that you can feed back into the system. But in general, I try to make sure that all of my people have the sales accepted opportunity level, which is for us about a 10-day period of time. We have all the data we're going to get on that, right? So we know the reject rate of our leads coming in. We know what's working from we have handed it off to sales and sales says it's good standpoint. Then in the long run, we look back at a more holistic level on return on ad spend from a financial perspective, how much money went in and how much money came out. But again, that's really lagging. So that changes goals. That doesn't change our day-to-day. Like I mentioned, in previous organizations, like big e-commerce, for example, like every day, every channel, every number, right to net profitability all the time. Like that's how we operated. You knew exactly how you were winning and exactly how you were losing every single day. It's rough. It's a good life because you know what's broken, but it is also hard because you know how you fail all the time. B2B, like you can fail for years before you know, right?
Before we pass it over to Tim, we've got about 3, 4, 5 minutes left. I want to open up if there's questions out of the audience, any specific things for any of the three panelists that you'd like to jump into.
This is for Rick.
That's the Workfront team, just so you know.
So you talked about every dollar has to live in one place only. Can you talk a little bit about attribution and how there are obviously different ways to look at attribution, different models and approaches to that?
Sure, yeah. Every dollar, that's just a cute way of saying it, but like you basically can't double count is what I'm saying, right? Like so attribution modeling aside, attribution modeling is fun because you're always wrong. There's nothing you can do that is actually right? You just have to decide how wrong you're going to be and which way you're going to be wrong together. And that is what's most important.
One of my favorite sayings is all models are wrong and some are useful.
Yeah, exactly.
And decide where you want to be on that level.
So like when I say that a dollar has to live in one place, like you have to have decided how that dollar will be counted. And then you have to align behind that. What you cannot have is marketing saying, oh no, we missed our number, but sales took these from us because somebody called somebody at some point and then they counted. Like that nonsense has to stop. You have to align, right? Yeah. That's all I meant.
Other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much. This has been a great conversation. I hope you guys got something out of it. Our panelists will be here most of the day, I think. I'm happy to take more questions after the fact. And thank you to Tim Eyre, Rick Galan, and Kieran Peterson for joining us today. I think Parker's got a couple of very quick announcements, and we'll cut it off for lunch.
Yeah, just really quick, we're headed to lunch back downstairs right outside the ballroom where you were earlier today. Also, if you got dressed in the morning like me, professional headshots right outside. So feel free to leave some feedback. We love that, and do some professional headshot while you're at it. John's show is going to be right after the keynotes this afternoon, as well as the giveaway, which we're going to be doing. It's going to be right after the keynotes, right before the keynotes, after the breakouts.
The one piece I will say about the headshots, what we're looking for especially from our customers and attendees, we are taking photos for you to take home, but we would also really love your feedback on video about Grow and about the conference. I think that's really what we're looking for. So it'll take just a few minutes, and if you could take a couple minutes over lunch and do that, we would love to hear from you and use your stories in some of the things that we're going to be doing later in the year around our website and in some of our marketing. Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you very much. It goes fast. I got the 5 minute and I was like, oh crap, I'm not even like halfway through.
2.5 questions?
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Group back there had a totally different way.
Oh, were you on the other side of that? Thanks a lot.